in those days I could carry, paddle, walk, and sing with any man alive. 24 years a canoe man and 41 years in the service. No portage was ever too long for me. 50 songs I could sing. I saved the lives of 10 voyagers. I had 12 wives and 6 faithful dogs. Every penny I had, I spent on pleasure. Were I young again, I would live my life the same way. There is no life so happy as a voyageur's life. Lake Superior, vast and unforgiving. One day I remember well, the sky turned dark and the wind roared like a wild beast. We were caught in her fury, with waves crashing over our canoe, threatening to swallow us whole. I saw men thrown into the icy waters, their cries for help lost in the storm. But there was no turning back. We paddled with all our might, praying for deliverance from the night. By some miracle, we reached the shore. We lost good men that day, brothers who faced the lake's wrath with courage. Their spirits still linger in the mist, guiding us through the darkness. Despite the dangers, we carried on. The Grand Portage rendezvous awaited us, a beacon of hope and reward. From the vast western frontier, the final leg, 9 grueling miles on the Grand Portage through dense forest and rugged terrain. Our bodies ached, our minds were weary, but the promise of the rendezvous pushed us onward. Grand Portage, where cultures met and stories were shared. The smell of roasting meat, the sound of fiddles and laughter. It was a celebration of survival, a testament to our strength. Traders, trappers, and natives all gathered to trade stories and goods. It was a time of unity, a brief respite from the harsh wilderness. One night at the rendezvous, I remember the firelight dancing on our faces as we sang songs of old, toasting our fallen comrades and the adventures yet to come. In those moments, surrounded by my fellow voyagers, I felt truly alive. We were more than fur traders. We were a brotherhood bound by the wild, by shared hardships and triumphs. Those days are etched in my soul, a time when life was lived on the edge, where every paddle stroke, every step on the portage trail was a testament to our resilience. The lake, the portage, the rendezvous, they will live on in the stories we tell and the memories we cherish.
Before the songs and stories, before the trade, there is always a prayer. Each year, the Grand Portage Rendezvous begins with a tribute to those who came first. A spiritual leader steps forward. A prayer of thanks rises to the sky. The drum beats, steady, sacred, unbroken. It is not a performance. It is a prayer in motion. A heartbeat of the people, calling spirits to gather and ancestors to listen. And in that sacred moment, an eagle soars overhead. A reminder, this land, this gathering, this history, all began with the Ojibwe. Where the boreal forest meets the inland sea, a cedar palisade still stands. Inside, a rebuilt fur trade depot. Outside, the trail that made it all possible. They called it Gitche-gami, the Grand Portage, a 9-mile lifeline overland, forged by indigenous travelers, adopted by French traders, vital to the survival of the Northwest Company. It bypassed the deadly chutes of the Pigeon River and opened the gateway to a vast inland empire. The hamlet of Grand Portage today might be missed in a blink from Highway 61. But in the 1780s, it was a global crossroads. But none of this power, none of this empire, would have existed without one peculiar little architect of history, the beaver. Not gold, not silver, but fur drove the engine of empire, and beaver pelts were the currency of choice. Soft, dense, waterproof, and destined for Europe's finest hats. They built dams, and unknowingly, they built fortunes. In this story, the beaver isn't the footnote, it's the headline. Furs from the Rockies, cloth from England, beads from Venice, muskets from Birmingham, all traded right here. But not everything came by canoe.
But he's not here.
My name is Louis Deneau. I am a sailor for the Northwest Company, and we sail schooners across the Great Lakes to supply the stuff for the Northwest Company. We have big schooners, 2-masted topsail schooners, and they carry a lot of stuff. People don't understand why we need schooners when you have canoes, but the horses and the pigs and the cattle that go to the farm at the forts, they don't travel well in a canoe. So they have to come across the Great Lakes by schooner. And there are things that are very delicate, like the Mr. McGilvery's fine china. They would not put that in a canoe. They would want that in a special cassette, and it would be packed, and it would go aboard the schooner to get to the fort.
They called them pork eaters, the voyageurs who paddled from Montreal to Grand Portage. Their canoes too packed for hunting, so they ate salt pork by the barrel, hence the name. They paddled the mighty Montreal canoe, a birch bark freighter 36 feet long, yet light enough to lift. It could carry up to 65 pieces of cargo, each pack weighing 90 pounds. That's nearly 3 tons, not including the crew. So overloaded, the lake sometimes kissed the gunnels with only 6 inches to spare. Every ripple could mean ruin, but the design? Genius. Indigenous canoe builders shaped these vessels without a single nail. Bent cedar ribs, stitched birch bark seams, sealed tight with pine pitch. Crafted to skim the water, to flex, not fight the waves. But not every path was liquid. When the rivers ended, they carried it all. A single man might shoulder 2 packs, 180 pounds, on a leather tump line across the forehead. They called it the portage de l'enfer, the hellish carry. Half a mile of mud, rock, roots. By the 3rd trip, you didn't feel the weight. You just felt the flies. At Grand Portage, the old canoes were repaired or rebuilt from scratch. Inside the canoe shed, tools were few, but hands were sure. No factory, no plans, just tradition and time. The red paddles were at the ready. The next brigade waited. These weren't just boats, they were lifelines, floating freight trains, stitched by memory, and driven by sweat. But once the packs were hauled in and the paddles leaned against the walls, Grand Portage came alive in an entirely different way. Canvas tents flapped in the breeze. Campfires crackled like applause. The air was thick with wood smoke, boiling stews, and a dozen bad jokes. This was the Voyageurs' village, part trading post, part festival, part campsite of organized chaos. Blankets laid out with goods for barter, tin cups, ribbons, flint, beads, and mirror shards. Over the cook fire, a voyageur stirred his legendary stew. He said it had secret ingredients. The others said it had witchcraft, or worse, bear grease. Maybe
This
both.
is called a brazier.
But no one went hungry. Not really. Between trade runs and chores, the games began in broad daylight. Strong men raced with trade bales slung over their backs. One fella tried to juggle powder horns. It didn't end well. And the highlight? Always the lacrosse match. The voyageurs lined up like roosters, confident, ready to impress. Then the women joined the field, graceful, fast, unforgiving. Within minutes, several voyageurs were flat on their backs, staring at the sky and rethinking their life choices. A blacksmith pounded away nearby, shaping the handle of a skillet. The rhythm of his hammer set the beat of the camp. Next to him, a tinsmith. Off behind the tents, something strange was taking shape. A circular float. Aha, the river hat, the voyageur explained. Perfect for crossing shallow rivers, as long as you enjoy paddling on your knees and the chance of public humiliation. Every man had a story without flipping one. None of them were flattering. But the floats were left behind on the trail for the next poor soul. A kind of communal curse, passed down with a wink. Beyond the smoke and laughter, the palisades stood tall, and inside them the tone changed. The Grand Hall was a world apart. Polished shoes clicked on plank floors. China cups clinked. Feathers filled the beds. Letters were written in long, looping script. In one corner, a painter captured the delicate face of a girl. In another, a Métis woman laid out intricate beadwork with surgical focus. And along the hallway, replica storefronts glowed behind glass. Perfume, velvet, beaver hats, and fine cloth shipped all the way from Europe. It was trade refined, wilderness commerce dressed in a waistcoat. In the kitchen, things were less formal, but far more interesting. Loaves of bread rose in an outdoor clay oven. Salt and cinnamon sat beside dried fish and bear grease. Every item in the pantry had a story. Some of them were even true. And through it all, voices mingled. French, English, Ojibwe, arguing over roots, laughing over stew, retelling tales already heard twice that day. It wasn't just survival, it was camaraderie, competition, culture. A living, breathing celebration of the fur trade's short but thunderous heyday. And somehow, amid all the fire and fiddle, you could still hear the quiet pull of water calling them back. Before we leave this place, we pause just across the road at the Grand Portage Heritage Center. Modern in form, but rooted in something timeless. Inside, the stories continue. Not as echoes, but as living memory. Painted, stitched, carved, and passed from hand to hand. The exhibits don't just display the past, they carry it. And for those who walk these halls with open eyes, there's a sense that history is still unfolding. This is where voices come together. Historians, rangers, artists, archaeologists, and members of the Grand Portage Band, each one helping to keep the story alive. It's a shared effort, a quiet promise to remember. And for visitors, it's an invitation to step closer, to listen longer, to see more than just what was, but what still is. Because this land remembers everything. This is where the journey begins, on the edge of Gitche-gami, where lake meets sky, and stories rise like mist from the water. The line was drawn. The 49th parallel. Grand Portage, once the center of the Northwest Company's world, was now American soil. In 1803, the company made its move. They packed up, turned west, and began again on the Kaministiquia River. A new post, a safer post, Fort William. But the move left a scar for the Ojibwe, for the traders, for the men who'd made Grand Portage their summer home. One voice from that time remains, and through him, the journey continues.
Ah, Fort William, a sight to behold, oui? Moving from Grand Portage, it felt like trading a humble cabin for a grand chateau, eh? I'm Jean-Baptiste, or just JB. I've paddled these waters since I could walk, seen a lot of changes, and made many memories. The Northwest Company, led by folks like Monsieur William McGilvery, decided it was time to move. Too close to the US border, they said. We needed a more secure, grander place. So, we packed up and headed to the mouth of the Kaministiquia River, to what would become Fort William. The new fort, oh la la, it was something. Warehouses, living quarters, and trading posts, all laid out like a well-planned city. It wasn't just a fort, it was the beating heart of our operations. Built to withstand the harsh Canadian wilderness, Fort William quickly surpassed Grand Portage in both scale and sophistication. C'est magnifique. There was hesitation from our Ojibwe partners, you know. The land, it was theirs long before we arrived, and they saw borders as foreign. But the strategic location of Fort William made it easier to trade, and soon enough, the new rendezvous site was as lively as Grand Portage. The Ojibwe, with their deep knowledge of the land and the ways of the beaver, they were indispensable. Every year, they'd come to Rendezvous. We'd greet each other like old friends. Rendezvous, it wasn't just about trade, it was a celebration. A time to relax, enjoy rare luxuries like bread and tobacco, and prepare for the next journey. In the dining hall, oh la la, we voyagers felt like kings for a moment. The taste of fresh bread after months on the trail, the rich, dark tobacco, and the camaraderie, it was like a little slice of heaven. After the festivities, there was much work. Canoes to repair, supplies to gather, new routes to plan. It was hard work, grueling at times. The life of a voyageur isn't for everyone. Long days on the water, harsh winters in the wilderness. But the friendships we forged, the bonds with our indigenous partners, and the thrill of the trade made it an adventure like no other. So here we are, Fort William, a symbol of resilience, ambition, and a testament to the spirit of those who braved the wilderness to carve out an empire. À la santé de Fort William.
We're brothers and sisters.
I'd much rather die than be under President Madison.
The Americans were here because the Northwest Company, it's a really good link between the British government and the indigenous people, and we're trying to kind of sever that link. Because the Northwest Company has been very helpful for the British during this whole war. And so we want to stop that.
By the early 1800s, the line between commerce and conflict grew thinner with every season.
Some people were saying it might be a bit of revenge because our company has caused a lot of trouble for the Americans during the war. They're calling it the 1812 War because of when it started. And our company has captured a couple of their outposts and even provided soldiers for their armies. We formed the Canadian Corps of Voyageurs. It's an actual regiment for fighting with the soldiers in battle. So we're causing a lot of trouble.
Fort William, though far from the battlefield, stood as a statement that Britain would not surrender the West without resistance. This reenactment, drawn from the spirit, not the letter of history, captures what lived beneath every handshake and treaty. Rivalry, territory, and two competing visions for a continent. The British and their voyageurs stood their ground. The Americans came, and they lost.
Thank you, sir.
But Major, I ask that when you return to U.S. territory, you inform the rest of the American military of the force and the steadfast resistance that they will encounter if they ever again attack the Northwest Company!
But the real fight wasn't with muskets. It was fought with ambition, with profit, with maps, and with every beaver pelt packed tight in a winter bale. But even victory couldn't hold back the tide. By the 1820s, the Northwest Company, once fierce, fast, and independent, was absorbed into the Hudson's Bay Company. The great trade empire began to slow. Routes shifted. Forts fell silent. What was once a way of life became a memory. But through it all, beneath the politics, beyond the Palisades, there were the voyageurs. And beside them, always, the Ojibwe. This trade, this movement of goods, of people, of culture, was not built on conquest. It was built on cooperation. The land wasn't discovered, it was known. The routes weren't forged, they were shared. The voyageurs paddled the rivers, but the Ojibwe understood them. Their guidance, their knowledge, their hospitality, they made this world navigable. The laughter by firelight, the blistered feet, the wild rice harvests, the birch bark canoes. This was a shared world, and its story belongs to both. And when the battles ended and the companies folded, what remained was not empire, but memory. We remember them, not for what they conquered, but for what they carried, and for what they shared.
But time, like an old meandering river, has carried those days away. The paths we blazed are overgrown, and our songs are echoes in the wind. The era of the voyageur is slipping into history. I say goodbye to the voyageur. I toast the adventures, the hardships, and the camaraderie that defined my journey. Here's to the man of the Grand Northwest, whose time has passed, but whose spirit endures.
A fond kiss and then we sever. A farewell, alas, forever. Deep in heart run tears, I'll pledge thee.